A lot of sports have to ask themselves, it's a hard question, where does the money come from? Thinking that the money will come from media rights and big sponsorship deals that come with large viewership numbers is probably an idealistic view.
Meet Michael Dhulst, co-founder and CEO of Supertri, reinventing triathlon for the next generation of elite athletes and first-timers alike. COO of Bahrain Endurance, home to Olympic medalists and world champions. Founder of Challenge Taiwan, Asia's largest long-distance triathlon. A builder redefining what modern sport looks like.
You had CrossFit in the past, they went up and then they kind of disappeared a little bit. It's a little bit of a counterweight to AI, counterweight to COVID, where people want to have real life experiences again.
What do you think investors understand and like about endurance sports, and what do you think they do not understand at this stage?
I think what they like for the moment is
Michael, welcome to the Berkida Podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I think, mass sports, endurance sports represent one of the areas of growth and one of the areas that I've been spending a lot of time, in my previous career as a banker, whether it's running, whether it's cycling, whether it's swimming, whether it's high rocks, so many more formats that are coming out. Perhaps, more importantly, we should talk about Supertri that sits at the center of that evolution and how you decided to launch this business, how you're building the business, and how you think endurance sports should be heading over the next decade. But to start with, Michael, why don't we start with you, and what did you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you first got involved in the world of triathlon?
it's good to be here. How I first got involved in the world of triathlon, it's many years ago. I'm originally from Belgium, and I guess as many things in sports, it's being inspired by a countryman who does a great performance. So in 1996, we had Luc van Lierde, who was the first European, I believe, to win Ironman Hawaii. Ironman Hawaii, obviously being a legendary triathlon, and I guess endurance sports being baked into Belgians' genes with cycling, Eddy Merckx, etc. So yeah, I think a lot of people in Belgium, after seeing this performance of Luc van Lierde, got triathlon on the radar, and since then actually we had a steady flow of well-performing triathletes globally. And actually that's also where the story started for me. I saw a great performance. I thought, hey, this looks cool. I wanna get into that. Even before, I was already dabbling around with a bit of swimming, biking, and running, but this was then for me the way to kind of combine them all. And so yeah, since 1996, been passionate about the sport, and then afterwards developed more of a corporate career, and as a career as an entrepreneur. And then after a good decade in corporate, got the opportunity to take a sabbatical, started in the sports business, and kind of never looked back.
Absolutely. It's difficult to look back once you start getting involved with the world of triathlon. But what were your original ambitions when you launched Super League Triathlon, and how did you actually start? I mean, do you want to give us a little bit more detail on that?
I think we started, or I was doing multiple things in triathlon, from event organizing to running a team for Sheikh Nasser of Bahrain. And ultimately, I guess it was 2015, 16, where we gathered with my co-founders of Supertri, and we looked at, okay, how can we reinvent triathlon, right? How can we break boundaries? How can we build the triathlon of the future? And at the time, our vision is, okay, we need to bring something that is attractive to younger people, right? So, which means make it more media friendly, create something for the TikTok generation, although TikTok was not a thing back then yet. But so yeah, what we started with was a professional closed league for triathlon, focused on shortening it and making it in more compact venue and formats. So a little bit of inspiration, I guess, from T20 cricket, right? And implement that into triathlon. That's where we started. Yeah, it obviously it exploded. It got a lot of media attention. We broadcasted it globally. It also helped us grow our social following, our YouTube following, a lot of viral clips, etc. So yeah, that's where we started.
Got it. Well, look, I mean, obviously, it's a space, the endurance sports, that continues to, see a lot of growth, a lot of investment, a lot of attention. And let me ask you, why do you think endurance sports have grown so significantly? And do you think there is some cultural shifts driving this trend that we're seeing, Maybe it's a move away from passive sports consumption.
It aligns with the learning curve that we have gone through, right? Because we started with triathlon as a media proposition, focused on viewership, growing the viewership, focusing on the entertainment element. But I think ultimately with media rights, let's say decentralizing, with media distribution decentralizing, a lot of sports have to ask themselves, I guess, a hard question: where does the money come from, right? And I think we came to the realization that for triathlon as a sport, thinking that the money will come from media rights and big sponsorship deals that come with large viewership numbers is probably an idealistic view. And then from there, we assessed and we looked at, okay, look at where endurance sports, specifically triathlon, comes from. It's a participation sports. I mean, Ironman has built a very successful business on the back of being a participation sports, right? So we reassessed what we were doing, continuing to focus on the shorter course, the more city-based, the more action-driven side of the sport, but actually adding the element of mass participation to it, right? And actually, I would say post-COVID, there has been a real boom in participation, and I think participation always starts with running. That's always kind of how the trend goes. You see all the marathons booming, you saw all the big running events booming, and then afterwards, people ask themselves, "What's next?" Right? And then you have the high roxes, you have triathlon, you have trail running, you have a bunch of other sports that are then benefiting of that interest. But I think it's for us specifically, it's going back, is asking ourselves the hard question: where does the money come from, right? How do we make this sustainable? We cannot just rely on media, right? Going back to the basis of saying, okay, participation is it, and then recognizing that there is a strong trend. I think it's a little bit of a counterweight to AI, a counterweight to COVID, where people want to have real life experiences again, right? And actually connect with other people through activity, through experiences. And I think that's the gap that we fill and where we see very good growth now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, I mean, I guess a little bit it's coming from increased attention that we see, for the world of health, wellness, and whether it's in the wearable space, whether it's in the longevity talks. But I guess a lot of these trends are also helping drive the focus into activities like triathlon. But for the listeners that may not, maybe they've heard of the brand but don't know the full story, why don't you talk a little bit? You were telling us how you wanted to do something that was a little bit short, a little bit like T20 is for cricket. So why don't you tell us a little bit what exactly Supertri today and how you would describe the business model and basically how it differentiates from some of the other, triathlon experiences?
Yeah, I think ultimately we have one business that is focused on short course triathlon. So if you look at comparable, would probably be Ironman. Ironman is a business that is focused on long course triathlon. So full distance, half distance, it would take a participant 7 to 14 hours to compete in it. But it has an extreme brand loyalty. I think it's one of the few brands that people tattoo on themselves, right? As a measure of I have achieved that. Our focus is on short course triathlon. So the average duration would somewhere be between 1 and 3 hours. We're focusing on city experiences. So we have events in downtown Chicago, downtown Austin, downtown Toronto, downtown Toulouse in France, downtown LA, right? So it's all city-based experience and short course triathlon that we believe is more accessible to younger crowds, younger generations who are pursuing kind of this. Like you say, they're interested in health, they're interested in fitness, they enjoy that, but they also enjoy coming together as a community, and that is very much what we're celebrating as Supertri. And alongside that sits also, of course, a professional element of the sport, right? So we integrate that, and then the professional side builds towards a grand final, which is today the biggest one-day prize purse in the sports, a great television spectacle where we will have Olympic champions racing against each other on a very exciting format.
Yes. And so, by the look of it, it sounds like this format innovation was quite integral and, important to, launching Supertri. And I guess, a little bit is, to be fair, I remember having this conversation with, the head of M&A Discovery back in the days, right? How difficult it was to create engaging content from some cycling competition, right? So And of course, this was coming from somebody that, well, however, I do remember my grandfather, just watching, 7, 8 hours, cycling, back in the day. So obviously, a little bit is because just maybe experiences have changed, expectations have
Yeah.
changed. So, but, definitely I can see, particularly though this short attention span developing, let's say, that it could be difficult to follow a race that lasts for 5 hours versus a race that lasts for an hour, right? I mean, yours is how long at the moment?
For the professionals, it's the professionals takes almost under an hour. So the other thing that we're doing is we're making it much more spectator friendly, right? Whereas a traditional triathlon is on open roads, they go out and they disappear out of sight for a long time. We race on a 1 mile loop, so the participants come by every 90 seconds. So we have an event in Toulouse every year. There's tens of thousands of spectators who come and watch because it is a great show, right? So indeed, that is an important part of what we do. And the other thing that it brings with it, it doesn't need the road closures, etc., which are increasingly also becoming a concern for cities, right? To kind of provide this infrastructure for events.
Well, I guess, one of the other important thing is how you produce that content, right? So is there any particular, ways that you're focused on, let's say on the broadcast production that is perhaps also different from, some of the other mass events? Or how are you, at the moment, maybe also, touching me to that question as well, what is the kind of distribution method, how can people, besides people that are there in person, how can people follow the events?
I mean, we used to put a great emphasis on making a live production of our professional events and then go through a more traditional kind of live broadcast, right? And the distribution of that sense. Now we have pivoted away. I mean, it still exists, but we have pivoted a lot of the money we would invest in live production to producing digital content, and then also making sure that it is readily available to the consumer, so not putting it behind paywalls, etc. So focus on making sure that we have more digital content, more highlight clips, more short clips, actually like little king clips, but also longer like 10-minute mini documentaries on specific elements. So creating a much wider variety of content from short to long, and making sure that it is distributed across all the channels, from broadcasts to YouTube to TikTok to Instagram to Facebook. And I think that is important. Too often we have the conversation, okay, we need to make the content shorter, we need to make the content longer. People don't have attention span, so we only want to create short stuff. The reality is, there's a place for everything, in my opinion. There's a place for, I mean, people still watch a whole football game, which often takes more than 2 hours, right? So
yes.
But they still get engaged. I mean, Tour de France still also broadcasts the whole races live, and there's still a place for that, especially some of the more exciting stages. So I do think there is no such thing as, okay, everything needs to be short or everything needs to be long. I do think you have to really think, you have to offer all sorts of content, but you have to really clearly understand, what am I offering we don't have to produce a live show that is 2 hours for every event. We can do that for our top event where there's a lot of prize money and the best athletes are. Other events we can manage through highlights, and actually a lot of people will follow the event through social media, through TikTok and through Instagram, and so just will watch a few king clips here and there and actually piece the whole story together. So I think it is understanding the channels, it's understanding your audience, and making sure that you produce the right content and the right size of content for each of those.
You sounds like we've been talking for a while, I think, to be fair, it's some of the things that I always say, not just related, let's say, to endurance sports, but in general, if you think about other sports investment, right, you can't look at only one strategy to make a sports property, whether it's whether it's an athlete or whether it's a competition successful. Let's talk a little bit about your participants, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, you have obviously a group of, let's say, professional, how they organize. Also, of course, one of the things that's attracting about mass endurance sports is that everybody can do it. So why don't we talk a little bit about, how you're organizing the participation to these events?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, participation has become a major driver. We now operate 8 events across the world, predominantly North America. I mean, strategically, we focused on getting North America off the ground first. As you know, triathlon is an Olympic sport, so I believe with LA 28 coming up, there's an interest in short course triathlon in America. There's a couple of upcoming stars, of course, being developed to get Americans on the podium. And so we want to leverage off that positive momentum that the Olympics have. And therefore, we have 6 events in North America with a total of about 20,000 participants across the 6 events. I mean, one of our major events is in Chicago. That event alone has close to 10,000 participants, right? And with that, it's probably top 3 largest triathlons in the world, right? So they're big events. They're very attractive. They are city-based. And what is interesting, I mean, traditionally, a triathlete is a demographic that is a higher disposable income, middle-aged. But yeah, now we see also interest from the younger demographics. And if I say younger, it's this 20-year plus that is growing quite fast and coming into this sports, right? And as we discussed previously, it's typically then a trend. Okay, I have done running. I want to do something a bit more different, a different challenge. And that's how they get into the sport.
Understood. But in terms of the professional side at the moment, how many professionals you say compete in your events?
Well, I mean, we have an event this weekend at Blenheim Palace, birthplace for Winston Churchill. We will have 120 professionals participating there, but that is probably a very big one, and ultimately they qualify then for our grand final, which is the biggest one-day prize purse in the sports. And in that one, we are very selective. We will allow 20 male and 20 female pro athletes racing.
Wow.
So that is then very much boiled down to only the best of the best.
Well, look, I mean, that sounds, of course, very exciting, but at the same time, building a global sports platform, can be quite challenging. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the biggest operational challenges, you've had to, face, whether it's the event delivery, whether it's the athlete relationships, how to build your commercial strategy, the international expansion, what can we go a little bit into the weeds on that?
Yeah,
From
sure.
your expertise.
There's a number of complexities, of course, right? So operationally, of course, we are not a stadium-based event, right? So this comes with complexities and disruptions and close city relationships. So yeah, that is one thing. But I think what is possibly the more interesting approach that we are choosing is to kind of say, look, we're focusing on building a brand, and therefore we're having a regional approach. So as I said, we have 6 events in North America. So we want to build some critical mass in North America that helps us establish the brand of Supertri. We create loyalty with our consumers, and then also we create platform for partners to align with, and that gives them multiple touch points within that market. And then for us, and it also allows us then, for example, to operationally to have a roadshow of all the equipment that goes around, right? And I think, yeah, similarly, we are now establishing events in the UK, the same thing. Let's look at getting 2-3 events in the UK to establish the brand, to establish a calendar over the year, and then to also establish value for partners who get involved with it, so that they can be a narrative that goes throughout the year, right? And I think that is important for a participation sports, to understand that there is these local communities or these national communities are key, right? And you have to be rooted in those, right? I see that.
Yeah.
I think ultimately with football you have the same thing. You have fans of a club, they live around the club, and that is the core element of it, right? So we want to have our loyal following in every country, and therefore we have to have multiple touch points within that country or within that region to follow up. And then that's very much our strategy and also our challenge in the first place, right?
Oh, thanks, Scotty. And we were talking earlier a little bit about the rise of health and wellness. And one of the things that has come with it, I'm a little bit of a user myself, whether it's the Apple Watch, whether it's the Oura Ring, and I think if I'm not mistaken, you have a Whoop, right? How much, wearables, how maybe more broadly, how much is technology embedded into endurance sports, and how important it is to the future of participation sports, and what is your views about all this connectivity of these connected devices and fitness?
Well, I think it's very much an opportunity, right? And I think obviously now also with the rise of AI, there's an opportunity to bring all of that together, right? So you can kind of, I mean, I think previously people, I mean, yes, you track yourself and you have that as your journey that goes every day. Then previously you had then a coach who was doing this now, and then you had an event, and it was almost all a little bit disconnected. And now with AI and the continuous race, we can bring it all together, right? So we have partnerships for that in place with our training partners who are focused on AI, and we kind of we build communities using data. So one example that I can give there is we have people participating, for example, in Chicago, as I was mentioning the event, 10,000 people, but we also have Blenheim Palace, another 7,000 people participating there. How do we make them part of the same community, right? And we're taking the data points of these different people, understanding who we are, and we are normalizing their data points. So we can create a sort of global ranking for triathlon, right? So it becomes something similar than like golf, where you have a golf handicap. If I'm in London based, and let's say you're California based, you tell me you're handicap 17, and I know, and that I'm a handicap 20. I know how we compare to each other, right? So through data, through our partnerships in data, and through AI, we are able to normalize the performances of people across different events, and we're able to establish like a global ranking to create a global community around it.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So, look, I mean, what do you think, if you obviously been developing this property over the last 10 years already, give or take,
Yeah,
right?
almost, yes.
Almost, yeah. So what do you think Endurance sports would look like in 10 years down the line? What do you think we would have seen in terms of participation, commercialization, media rights value, expansion? What do you think are going to be the greatest opportunities, and what are going to be the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I mean, 10 years is obviously a long time, but I would say in the next 5 years, I see a continuous growth and interest in participation sports. And I think there's always a mixture of, let's say, traditional sports like running. I think triathlon is now become part of that. And then there is some sort of a more trending sports, right? Frankly speaking, let's see how high rocks go. I mean, you had CrossFit in the past, they went up and then they kind of disappeared a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
there's always in the running space also you had the color run and all these properties who are very yeah, they go up and they go down a lot, right? So I do think participation sports, they always have this they have a stable phase, like the marathons. Triathlons is now become part of that. I think Grand Fondos and cycling will also be part of that. And then there's a number of kind of experiences that are more cyclical in nature. But yeah, but it creates an interesting mix, and I think both of them will continue to grow over the next decade. A lot of the enhancements or the amplification will become to take the physical part of the events that we deliver, support them with the virtual side of things, right? So where the physical part becomes really becomes even more the cherry on the cake, but there is actually a connectivity throughout that community that goes year round, right? And I do think there's a lot of opportunity in technology to support and bring those communities together, because I believe that people join events because they want to be part of something, they want to learn, they want to find a community they belong to and they can identify with, but they want to continuously stay part of, right? So I think the opportunity for all mass participation events is to leverage this power that we already have and then leverage technology to build communities around that, because I think that's really the power that we have, is bringing people together through a shared interest and for very unique experiences.
And look, this has been super interesting and very refreshing to hear your perspectives on endurance sports and triathlons. But also, let me say, it's a space that has seen, quite a lot of investments, quite a lot of activities, where there is, some combinations, where there's been advanced investing into Ironman. So what is your view on how, different triathlons activities can coexist, let's say, and what do you think are, why is there so much, investments into the space?
I think there's generally a lot of investment in mass participation sports as a counterbalance to AI and all the digital space, right? Because I think people recognize that people want to have real life experiences and will want to have real life connections with other people. So I think that is driving a lot of the investment into this space. But yes, to your other point, I do think there's a lot of opportunity still for consolidation also, and I think. Yeah, this is still very early stage, I think. And this is not triathlon. I would say this is wider mass participation. Yeah, different brands are pursuing different strategies, are establishing themselves, are proving sustainability and scalability of their strategies, right? And as they get proven in the next few years, I do believe we will see further consolidation into those, right? And look, I've always kind of believed, yeah, there's an opportunity to because triathlon does not exist in a vacuum. If I am a triathlete, I will also do running events. I will also do trail running events. I will also do a cycling event, right? So I do think there is an opportunity to consolidate different brands because people will identify with a brand, but to consolidate different brands into a wider group, similar to. Yeah, I mean, how you would have Unilever doing a lot of fast mover consumer goods, right? And not they will not label everything the same. So I do think there is an opportunity to kind of connect the different brands who talk to a similar kind of audience and then bring and own that whole market.
Great. And look, one final question. Let me ask you, what do you think investors understand and like about endurance sports, and what do you think they do not understand at this stage?
I think what they like for the moment is, again, going back to what I said before, is that it's counterbalance, it's the real life experiences, and ultimately there is a proof of a trend there, which is supported by health and fitness, that will continue, right? I think what investors don't yet understand is how it works and how it is scalable. Right. I think there's still some proof points to be delivered, right? I mean, for the moment, what is happening is brands establish themselves. But again, I think the interesting part for investors, if we can bundle different brands into one group, right? And actually create an ecosystem where you talk to a consumer and you have them walk between the different brands in your group and actually then benefit also from the economies of scale of operating like that, right? All underpinned by one ecosystem ultimately, right? Yeah, I think that is the real opportunity that is still to be embraced and proven.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for sharing your views. I really appreciate your time. I think this has been, as I was saying, super, super interesting and, particularly, important to also recognize that there are other ways to participate as well in sports that are also allow you to, grow and also, which is, I think, quite interesting about your events, participate alongside professional. It's really, exciting, exciting space to be involved with. And we really would like to thank you for joining today the Berkida Podcast and look forward to keeping the conversation open.
Thank you, Massimo. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you.